Hi, I'm Oliver Sharp. I head up our AI efforts here at Highspot, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to share with you some of the investments we're making, the approach we're taking, and why we're very excited about what AI represents for the future of enablement. So if you think about enablement and what the key challenges are that people face, we've been talking to our customers now for many years about that, and they've shared a whole range of different challenges, ranging from the things that marketers face, the things that sellers and their leaders and their managers face, and the things that the enablement team has to go through in order to help them get the most out of their efforts. And a lot of those challenges are now suddenly much more capable of being addressed through software. And that's what's magical about AI. AI is able, for example, to reason about language in these really novel ways that have never been possible. And language is fundamentally the essence of what sales is about. If you think about what sellers do, they consume a lot of content and information. They then figure out messaging and ways to frame and tell stories to the customers. They then go and actually engage with customers and they have conversations with them. And so the essence of sales, the whole foundation of it, is language and how that language is resonating and working between the people who are engaging with each other. And AI allows us to really understand and reason about and analyze that language in ways that was never possible before. And so we see this opportunity as a moment when we as a vendor and when the industry broadly can really accelerate the efforts that enablement teams are making and really transform how software can help that process in order to help sellers be as successful and effective as possible, and in order for companies to grow. So let's talk about what is our approach that we're taking. So where it all starts is with the data. AI is just fueled by data. AI feeds on data. And so the first thing you want to do if you're really going to try to take advantage of AI is you've got to build out a very rich set of data sources. And the magic isn't in any one of those sources often, but it's in combining them. So for example, if you ask a question like, what's the best case study for financial services? Well, in order to answer that question really effectively, you need to understand the content. You need to understand what's a case study, first of all. You need to understand which ones actually are appropriate for that audience. But then to do a great job of answering that question, you want to go much further than that. You want to basically say, what items are sellers like me using with customers like mine, which when you share it with them, they engage with it, they're intrigued by it, they want to have conversations with you about it. That then leads ultimately to the deal moving forward. And so in order to do a great job of answering that question, you need to understand the content, but you also need to understand the analytics on how content's being used, where it's being most effective, and you want to understand the conversations that spurs between the sellers and the buyers. And so by connecting all that information together, you're able to give answers and insights to your users that are not encoded in any one data source. They have to be understood by looking at multiple sources together. And that's the job of this middle layer here on this graph, is basically to take all those data sources and allow us to extract insights by combining them together and connecting them together. And those insights can then be used in a variety of ways. One of the ways is to power a UI experience that we build. So an example of that, and perhaps you've used it, is something we call instant answers, where you can walk up to a Highspot domain or an item or a meeting or pretty much any other object in Highspot, and you can start talking to it. You can ask it questions and you can get answers. And so that's a kind of a classic AI-ish interaction that you might have with that layer. And we have that in our product as one of those experiences. But there's other experiences that you also would like to power. So for example, you might want to use role play. Now, role play is a really powerful way to get ready for a sales conversation because it's a simulation of a conversation. And since ultimately that's what sales often is, much of what sales is a series of conversations, the best way to build your skills is to practice. And then before you have the conversation, and then of course you'll want to get coached afterwards. So role play is how you practice ahead of time. And then feedback about what happened in the meeting is how you you learn and improve afterwards and get coached on where you can improve. And so the idea is that these UI experiences, like asking questions and getting answers, like performing role play, like getting coaching feedback about places where you maybe got stuck in a conversation or you could have answered a question better. Those are the ways that we can really help our sellers get ready to have the conversations they need to have them as efficiently as possible, and then get as much guidance and coaching afterwards so they get even better. And another kind of experience that we want to be able to power is beyond what we ourselves will build. We're building a whole series of the experiences, some of which we just talked about. But what's also happening in the industry is various vendors, like, many of them, but let's take two, Salesforce and Microsoft, have invested very, very heavily in this space. And the idea that they are trying to bring about is that, let's take Agentforce at Salesforce as an example. They want to provide the seller with one place to go to ask questions or interact with their sales efforts. But in order to really make that powerful, Salesforce wants to be able to connect to vendors like us. And so where we can come up with an insight based on the data that we uniquely have, we can then share it with Agentforce, and it can then power the Agentforce UI experience so that this layer not only benefits people using Highspot first-party experiences, but it also will benefit people who are in these other vendors' third-party experiences, which we can help share those insights there as well. So the goal is, let's bring the data together. Let's reason about it across these different sources. Then let's power these different UI experiences and make sure that we're able to deliver as much value as possible to users to help them with their efforts. So let's talk a little more about some of the specific experiences that we're investing in. So one of them is, we talked about instant answers. So this is the ability to walk up and just ask whatever questions on your mind. We've then generalized that to something we call Copilot Center. And the idea behind Copilot Center is that you can create your own agents, and an agent might have a particular set of content that it uses. So let's take an example. One that we use internally ourselves is a support agent. And many support teams have very detailed, very thorough, specialized content that lets them support their customers. And they want to give their support people very, very different answers than what a typical seller would ask. Sellers wouldn't want, very long, multi-point, procedures for how to deal with a certain problem in the product. And so by creating a support agent, you can point your agent at the content that's appropriate in that scenario, and you can tune it to say, okay, these users want really long answers, very detailed answers. And it also, because you constrain the content that you allow the agent to use, you get better answers. And so that's another example of an experience where you can have a conversation either with Highspot generally or with one of these custom agents that you've created. A second kind of experience is role play. We talked about that a little bit. You want to be able to customize the role play so that the system is reflecting a real world situation that your sellers face with the particular persona or role that they need to talk to and a particular selling situation that they need to practice. And so that's what you would do in a role play experience. Another experience that you might want to have is the ability to understand as a marketer, where is my content being used with customers in the real world. So here's my message. Show me places where there are meetings where those conversations happened. Let me listen in on those meetings if you're comfortable with letting your marketers do that. Summarize what's happening in those conversations. And so you're arming your marketers with a really powerful ability to understand what's happening on the ground with the content that they're creating and sharing with sales. So these are all examples of AI experiences, AI-powered experiences in our product that allows you to get a kind of insight that you've never been able to have before because you're leveraging the fact that the AI can process enormous quantities of data, and it can also understand and reason about language. And that opens up all these possibilities. And we think that this is a huge opportunity to amplify, accelerate, and extend all the work that your enablement teams are doing, and not only have a much bigger impact, but also be able to measure that impact much more effectively than historically has been possible.